Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us here tonight and to listen to us talk about the updated flood modelling data that we've prepared for the Devon Company Coast area. So my name's Sean Mallon. I'm the Group Manager Infrastructure Services here at Kapiti Coast, and we're also going to be joined tonight by Rita and Simon, who are going to be doing most of the talking. And they're going to talk you through a presentation with some slides and some visuals, and then we're also going to have obviously some Q&A. So as we work through the presentation, everybody be muted, but you can ask questions through the Q&A, and we will try and get to all of those questions, but depending on how many we get, we might have to get back to you after the webinar and provide you an answer. And if we don't get to your question tonight, we'll be answering all of those questions directly with you over the next 2 or 3 days. So flood modelling, if you live on the Kapiti Coast, if you lived here for a while, Kapiti is subject to historically quite a few flooding related issues across the district, and the flood modelling mapping that we're updating at the moment is not something new. It's something that Kapiti has been doing for certainly in the time that I've been here, at least the last 20 years. So Kapiti was one of the first councils, I think, to get a comprehensive flood hazard modelling undertaken across its district. So what we're looking at the moment is, I think it's about the 3rd iteration of that flood model, and so we're going to talk to you tonight about what that looks like. So this webinar is going to be recorded, and then we'll make it available on the our webpage again in the next couple of days, and you can download it and have another look at it once we've loaded it up on the engagement page. So we're only going to be responding to questions that relate to the flood hazard mapping work. So, and again, you can have a look at the recorded webinar on the haveyourSay.kapiticoast.govt.nz flood maps in the next couple of days. And we're going to, like I said, run through a presentation, and if everybody could just be respectful in terms of their questions, then we'll be able to answer a lot more of those as we work through this process. So on that basis, I shall hand over to Rita O'Brien, and she'll take you through the slides.
Hello, my name is Rita O'Brien, and I'm Council Stormwater and Asset Manager. Kapiti Coast is a district prone to flooding due to our geographical makeup. As a result, we regularly experience localised flooding from rainfall events. However, none of these recent events have been equivalent to a 1 in 100-year rainfall. For those that have been around in 2003, and 2015, here are some of the return periods for the recent events. So for the event that occurred in the 14th of May 2014, the spatial distribution of rainfall varied across the district. For example, in Waikanae, the return period for the rainfall was equivalent to a 6-year event. For the Waikanae River above State Highway, that peaked at a flow expected from a 10-year return event. Te Horo Beach, the return period for the rainfall there was equivalent to a 10-year, and for the Wharamuku stream, it was quite a big event, and the flows under State Highway peaked at the flow expected from a 20-year return period. For the event which hit Paikakariki in October 2003, the return period for the rainfall was estimated to be between 20 and 120 years for the various durations. So the highest period or peak was assigned to a 6-hour period between 3:30 in the morning, 3:30 and 9:30 in the evening on the 30th of October. So that's huge rainfall, 120 years return period. We also have areas that are regularly impacted by groundwater after extended periods of wet weather, with low-lying parts at times becoming inundated for extended periods. Most recently, this occurred in kind of the Peka Peka region and some of the low-lying Paraparaumu Beach regions in 2023. Flood modelling is an essential tool used to help us understand the flood risks we face, to protect lives and property, and inform infrastructure upgrades and future planning by council and other agencies. The model also enables us to test development and infrastructure projects to ensure they don't impact elsewhere in the network or on the floodplain. Our previous model, flood model, was last updated in 2011 based on the best information and modelling technology available at the time. From what Sean has said at the beginning of this presentation, flood hazard modelling is not new to Kapiti and has been used since the mid-1990s. We're now updating our flood model to reflect the changes that have occurred since 2011 and to take advantage of improvements in modelling technology and more accurate data and topographic information. This is the last stage of our peer review process. We acknowledge that there may be areas where the model could be off, where the ground levels might be incorrect, or structures may impact flood behaviour that aren't captured accurately or correctly. We are keen to get your feedback if this is the case. So what the model will be used for: these improvements ensure that we have reliable and comprehensive flood risk information for planning, infrastructure development, and emergency management. The model also provides information for property owners about the risks they face, both now and in the future, and what might be needed to manage or reduce that risk. This is not a district plan process. Any proposals to change the district plan would be a separate consultative process in accordance with the Resource Management Act. At this stage, we are just checking our flood model accurately reflects flood behaviour. Okay, so what's new in the model? The updated model show flooding from the district's urban drainage network, piped and minor watercourses within urban areas, but have been extended to include the Te Kowhai and the Mauapuku catchments. These are potential growth areas. The physical shape of the land, topography, is represented in the model using LiDAR data. LiDAR is captured using lasers from aircraft, and this provides a detailed and accurate terrain mapping. The model is based on LiDAR data captured in 2017. This will be updated prior to the model being finalised. The new model also uses more detailed information about our stormwater network, including pipe depths and dimensions, sumps and culverts, and pump station flow rates, and picks up information on other major infrastructure projects such as the Kapiti Expressway and Transmission Gully. Groundwater interactions and soil infiltration are now captured also in the model, which better reflects what's happening here due to elevated groundwater, a consequence of having built on what was extensive wetland and dune systems. The new model includes the latest rainfall data and also includes projections for climate change. Incorporating climate change projections into flood hazard modelling provides an estimate of its potential impact on future flood risk. This includes considering changes in rainfall intensity, river flows, and/or sea and groundwater levels. One of the strengths of the new modelling approach is it will enable us to keep the model up to date to reflect changes as they occur over time, rather than being a static model that is only updated every 10 years or so. The model also enables us to compare flood scenarios, test different mitigation measures, and assess development proposals. Okay, what you can see on the screen now is a simulation or a video of the output of the flood model, which we can kind of run maybe. We took a hybrid approach to the hydrological model, which represents the natural processes involved in the movement of water. The area on the screen now is a low-lying flat land. where there is the potential for ponding and where interaction of groundwater is likely. For this areas, or similar areas, we used a rain-on-grid approach. Rain-on-grid simulates how water falls on and flows across the landscape. You'll also notice here that there's an interaction with the tide and the open channel network and the pipe network. A subcatchment approach was applied to steeper catchments where water flows in channels and there's insufficient data to simulate a fine-scale hydraulics. This approach to hydrology better captures how water actually behaves during heavy downpours compared with the old models. As a consequence, however, you will see more discrete areas of ponding compared to the old maps. Much of this is relatively shallow and where you might expect ponding to occur, such as low-lying areas on your properties and within your neighbourhoods, close to roads and other overland flow paths. Cool. Understanding the flood maps. It's important to note the new flood maps are modelled on the 1 in 100-year event, which has the 1% chance of happening in any year, or 100% chance of happening in every 100 years. It is a statistical analysis or a probability. This means you likely haven't seen an event this extreme, but we still need to plan for it. Understand and managing risk associated with a 100-year event are best practice, as outlined in current MFE guidance, and are required under the regional policy statement for the Wellington region. During a 1 in 100-year event, you can expect to see many roads flooded and parts of the stormwater network overwhelmed. You'll see water trapped in areas where outflow is restricted by structures such as buildings or retaining walls or by ridges of land. This is also why sometimes in these new models you can see ponding on a hill. It just means that water's been trapped there as the waters recede. The model outputs are shown in their raw state. Once finalised, the model outputs will be smoothed to fit to property boundaries or contours where appropriate. Similarly, discrete areas of ponding may not necessarily translate into the final version or may be represented in a different way. This smoothing was not done prior to community engagement as we didn't want to lose any detail too soon in the process. The presentation of a range of climate projections and time periods gives an envelope of impact and allows for a more direct comparison with Council's previous model outputs in the district plan. In reality, where we land as a community with respect to climate change will likely fall somewhere between current climate and a worst case scenario of 3.7 degrees of warming. Different climate change projections and time periods can be employed for different purposes. One of the benefits of this model. For example, when considering a major highway or new development where the consequences of our likelihood is high, then the costs of adapting to a higher projection may be considered worthwhile. In other situations where the consequences and or likelihood are low, for example, for insurance purposes where companies are more concerned about short or medium term risk rather than one projected over the next 100 years, then a lesser projection and or return period may be appropriate. The question of how much risk the community is comfortable taking is a complex one, and as said before, will be a subject of ongoing conversations with the community through annual and long-term planning and district plan change processes. It is important to note that what we are discussing here is the models which represent areas serviced by the Council's urban stormwater network and associated waterways. Greater Wellington Regional Council are also updating their flood models. The management of the major river systems is the responsibility of Greater Wellington Regional Council. Greater Wellington is also updating its major river flood models. These are areas of There are areas of overlap, which mean areas not identified as flood prone in our mapping might be subject to flooding under their modelling. Their process differs from ours, where they will test their models based on historic river flood events for the Otaki, Waidahu, Mangoni, Mangapori and Waikanae catchments. Our models use the outputs from Greater Wellington models as a boundary condition where they intersect, which means our models will be updated once Greater Wellington's new models are finalised. In the district planning process, these two models are stitched together so that the community only gets one version of the flood hazard extent and depth. We continue to work with Greater Wellington to ensure a joined up process. They will be joining us at our Saturday pop-up sessions, and we also encourage you to visit their website for more information on their process. And the slide just shows how we do that. Okay, I'll now pass over to Simon, who will talk about how the feedback we're seeking from our community and give an overview of the online engagement materials.
Thanks, Rita, and hi everyone. My name's Simon. I'm Council's Senior Advisor for Stormwater and Coastal Assets. So as Rita's mentioned, the purpose of this engagement is to check in with you as an important final step for refining and finalising the flood model update. As Rita's mentioned, the maps show a significant event. So that's the 1 in 100-year rainfall event. In such an event, you can expect that the ground to be saturated and the stormwater network overwhelmed in places. So we're not asking whether the maps show an extent of flooding that you've seen before, because you probably haven't. The 1 in 100-year event is an extreme event, even under existing climate conditions. However, knowing where you have experienced ponding in the past could indicate where this could get worse during a major rainfall event, although not necessarily. What we're interested to hear from you is whether the flood behaviour shown in the new flood maps makes sense, given what you know about your property and your local area. You may have built a retaining wall or filled part of your property or changed the drainage in some way. If you have and you think this might change the flood behaviour on your property, please let us know. Some recent changes may be picked up when we include the latest LiDAR data. However, if there is anything that just doesn't make sense, please provide your feedback. You can do this through the feedback form on our Have Your Say page, or pick up one from one of our libraries, the service centres, or drop-in sessions. We'll review your feedback with the assistance of our flood consultants, and the model will be adjusted where appropriate. We'll let you know the outcome of this assessment. However, please be patient, as the review of the feedback may take us some time given the level of interest. Your local knowledge and feedback are crucial for verifying and improving the accuracy of the model and identifying any local nuances in flood behaviour. So in terms of how to get involved, I'm now just going to give a quick overview of our online engagement materials, which we encourage you to have a look at. These materials are our interactive story map, an online mapping portal, and our Have Your Say feedback page. And now I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. So firstly, this is our interactive story map. So this is an interactive platform that provides an overview of the history of flooding in the district, information on the history of flood modelling in the district, and details of how the updated model has been built. As you scroll down the page, you'll see some interactive features, such as these historic photos, overlays showing changes that have occurred around the mouth of the Waikanae River. So you can sort of toggle back, and to the Otaki floodplain. These images of the Otaki River shows just how much the river has been constrained since 1939. While the management of these rivers are the responsibility of Greater Wellington, they do show the degree to which the floodplain has been altered. And yes, and this image here shows the level of detail captured by the LiDAR, as well as how the ground levels in some places still reflect the historic drainage patterns, although that's not necessarily obvious from the recent aerial photography. In the story map, you'll also find links to other online resources, which I'll talk about in a moment, and information about what we'll do with your feedback. You can also navigate this page using these tabs along the ribbon at the top of the page. Story map provides information about the history of development in the district and the types of flooding we experience here. It explains the evolution of flood modelling on the Kapiti Coast, who has different roles within flood management, and what the new model includes and how it will be used. It also provides information on the new flood maps and the climate change scenarios. And this slider here allows you to compare the different climate scenarios. So on the left-hand side here is the 1 in 100-year flood event under current climate. And as you move the slider across, you will reveal what the flooding could look like under a future climate change. However, if you want to see how the new maps impact your property, please visit the map portal, which I'll get to next. We also include links to Greater Wellington's projects and some other work that's being undertaken by NIWA. And we also have links to the Have Your Say page. Now I'll just flip to the map portal. So the online mapping portal allows you to search for a specific property and see the impact of the different flood scenarios. So to do that, you put your address in the little search bar here, put something in, then select the correct property, because several might come up, and you'll then get a zoom. It's probably best to just close this box once you've got the right property. I've also find it's good to just press this X up here in the search bar, just so it doesn't sort of get in your way. So next you select the flood scenario that you're interested in. These are accessed across by the buttons along the bottom. So here in the first screen here, you can see the existing district plan maps, which are comprised of two data sources: Kapiti Coast's previous flood model and Greater Wellington's flood model for major river flooding, which they're currently updating, as Rita had just mentioned. We also have the new flood maps for 3 scenarios. So these are all the 1 in 100-year rainfall event under current climate, under 1.8 degrees of global warming and 3.7 degrees. So you can see, oops, I just turned this one off. Yeah, so you can sort of see the difference there if you just click across. The first time you load this into your browser, it might take a little bit of time, so just please be patient. They're quite chunky. There are other layers you can open. So you do that here with the layers that I just showed you a moment ago. These include the property layer, the rivers layers, building outlines, and contours. The contour layer may help you see the relationship between the ground levels and areas of ponding or flooding, such as here at the back of the library building, where you can see it looks like water getting trapped between, I'll just zoom in a bit, getting trapped in between the building and the area of low area shown by the contours there. If I flick, you can sort of click on and off the flood depths, and you can sort of see how that sort of relates to the water getting trapped in the back here. That might help. And then another example is over here at the school, where you can sort of see there's an area shown here by the 7.5 metre contour, which is sort of relatively lower than the areas around it. And if you flick that on, you can sort of see how the water's ponding around the buildings there. And you can turn, essentially, you can use the legends, turn on the legend tab here, and for whatever layers you have open, so you have to have the layer open, you can see the information there. So if, for example, if I click into here and show the existing district plan extents, then it'll show, so you can see this color is the existing district plan maps. Elsewhere in the catchments, you'll see the red cross-hatching, which is Greater Wellington's existing flood extents. And provided you have the new flood depths open, you'll see what the different colors mean. And essentially, the darker the blue, the deeper the water; the lighter the blue, the shallower the water. You can also change the base maps if you want, up the top right here, and there is a link to the Have Your Say page at the bottom left. You can also, if you click, when you've got the flood maps layer open, you can click anywhere, any of these cells, and you can see what the particular depth is for that particular cell. So yes, so please let us know if any of the details that you see here appear incorrect, or if ponding is showing up in areas that don't make sense. Please include any photos or diagrams you think might help us understand. Now I'll just go to the Have Your Say page. So the Have Your Say page provides a central feedback hub for this project. Here you can sign up for project updates, find key dates, and details of our upcoming drop-in sessions, as well as links to other engagement materials. There's the dates there. And then here you can also see, you can access the model build methodology report, which gives all the technical details of how the model has been put together, including the specifications, and detailed model build reports for each catchment. So they're all there if you're interested to read the detail. Further down the page, you'll find our frequently asked questions, which we will continue to update as more questions come in. And you can provide your feedback in any of these share your feedback buttons. That'll take you then to a survey type setup where you can provide your information, and upload any photos or other information. I'm now going to stop sharing and we'll go back to the slide presentation. Rain, if you can bring that up. So the drop-in sessions, as I mentioned, we will be hosting some drop-in sessions over the next few weeks. The first of these is between 10 a.m. and noon this Saturday at the council chambers here in Paraparaumu. We'll have computers there so you can look up your property and respond to any questions you have. We will be holding these around the district, but if you're welcome to attend whichever is convenient. You don't have to attend the local one. And yes, as Greater Wellington is engaging on their flood maps too, they'll be joining us on those on our drop-ins. And now I'll just hand back to Rita to discuss how the model will be used once finalised.
Yes, following this part of the process, we'll review the feedback and where appropriate incorporate any necessary changes. You may be asked for supporting documentation, for example, as-built information or topographic survey or data. We will respond to all those who have provided feedback as we work through the review process, noting that this may take us some time.
That pretty much concludes the presentation. Now we'll go to some Q&A. Firstly, we're going to address questions submitted ahead of time, ahead of the webinar. Hopefully we've responded to some of these during the presentation, and then we'll respond to any that are added into the chat. Any questions though that we don't get to answer in the time that we have left, we'll include in our FAQs section of our Have Your Say page. We'll get back to you directly. So we've got a question there about around stormwater management and the timing of specific projects identified in the long-term plan. Sean, did you want to answer that one?
Thanks, Simon. So yeah, thank you for that question. For those of you who've been around for a while, the council runs a long-term plan process every 3 years. And in that long-term plan, we set out the next 10, 20 years worth of projects and investment for the council. So I think it was 2018 or maybe in 2015, we presented a 30-year plan around stormwater improvements, and that was from memory about $250 million worth of work. So yes, there is a schedule of projects. We review that and update that every 3 years as part of the long-term plan. We also have a look at it as part of our annual plan process. So we'll be coming back around to have another look at that next year, and we'll provide public information as to what that schedule of projects looks like as part of that process.
Thanks, Sean. We also have a question here. We've had many questions actually regarding why is a property that's never been flooded shown as mapped on as being flooded? Why is it the only house in the street instead of the whole street? Do you want to have that one, Rita?
Can do. And the other one that sort of goes along with this is probably those people that are newly affected, but very minor newly affected. So they've only got the edge of a grid impacting their land. So they would have received letters as well as because they're newly affected. When it comes to individual properties, would recommend that we engage directly with property owners because a lot of the nuances are site and context specific. But in general terms, it should be noted that these models are using a peak rainfall for a design 1 in a 100-year event. So you can expect to see many roads flooded and parts of the stormwater network overwhelmed, and it may be different because we're using a rain on grid on the floodplain basically. So you'll see water trapped in areas where the outflow is restricted by structures such as buildings and retaining walls or small ridges of land. The 2021-30 map incorporates climate change and freeboard to allow for a comparison between the existing district plan maps. So you can look at what was, and it's like comparing apples with apples with the new models outputs. These haven't. The climate change projection, how we apply and use freeboard isn't set yet. We haven't landed. These are produced to provide for the conversation around do these models reflect the things on the ground. So as we've said in the presentation, the model outputs are shown in their raw state. So they're kind of pixelated. So you see the underlying model grid. Once they're finalised, the model outputs will be smoothed where appropriate to fit property boundaries, building footprints, or contours as appropriate. Similarly, discrete areas of ponding may not necessarily translate into a final version or may be represented in a different way. They won't necessarily be brought forward in any shape, way or form to a district planning process. It's a separate process. This smoothing was not done, as I said, prior to community engagement, as we didn't want to lose any detail too soon in the process. So we will be in touch regarding specific concerns relating to your property.
Okay, we've got another one there. How do we find out why my property was identified as being potentially prone to flooding during a major event? If work is being undertaken on a property that might mitigate, so if any work's been undertaken on the property, how will that be incorporated in the final model and map details?
Yeah, I suppose once again, this sort of question is site and context specific, so we would be in touch regarding their concerns relating to the specific property. So really encourage people if they have concerns about how the flooding is represented on the property or they don't agree with how it sits, then certainly we are open to discussing how that might be and what it might be. With respect to the second part of the question, re how the information is updated, the updated information is incorporated into the final model build. Documentation may be required to support your position if the mitigation or the issue at the situation is not obvious. So this may take the form of as-built drawings or topographic survey or updated LiDAR data. The model build reports are still in draft, and this is deliberate to allow for their finalisation at the end of this process. Your full feedback is actually critical part of the peer review of the model build. So we really encourage you to give us your information and discuss it with us.
We've also got a question here about the accuracy of LiDAR data. And because there are limitations to the accuracy of LiDAR data relative to the datum, and then how that relates to the different projections.
I suppose this question was kind of there was quite a few questions around the conservativeness of the model build and the reliability of some of the founding assumptions. So in terms of LiDAR, yes, it is correct that the specification for accuracy is 0.1 meters for elevation, so it can vary. However, with flood hazard modelling, levels are relative to each other. So any area associated with a particular data set is not really an issue because it all moves relative to that surface. So if you have specific concerns in certain areas, can you please highlight those through the Have Your Say or email, and we'll certainly check it out. Our experience, however, with LiDAR is it's very good in most locations, but not all. And the models also have a great deal of additional survey data in key areas such as open channel cross sections, culvert and bridge crossings. Yeah. In terms of freeboard, the freeboard has been incorporated into the Q100 climate change to 2130 maps. And freeboard is a factor of safety that compensates for model inaccuracies, network failures, and extreme climate change projection, and natural environmental factors such as wave and wind action. Freeboard is defined in at least 3 national standards, each with slightly different context. It is included in the 2130 scenario, along with climate change projection, to allow for a comparison between the existing maps and the new maps of the new model outputs. The presentation of a climate change scenario that we chose gives an envelope of impact. And in reality, where we land with respect to climate change is likely to fall somewhere between the current climate and the worst case scenario of 3.7 degrees of warming. Okay, so while all local authorities use freeboard and projections for climate change, how it is applied or presented differs depending on the context. And where council lands with freeboard levels and its implications and climate change projections will be the subject of ongoing conversations with the community through long-term and annual planning and district plan changes. So just to note that at this stage, we are just checking the flood model accurately reflects flood behaviour. So although important conversations, probably a bit too soon to have them maybe.
Great, thanks, Rita. There's also some questions around sedimentation accumulation in the Waikanae River and how this is accommodated in the model.
The management and flood model associated with the Waikanae River sits with Greater Wellington, so this question needs to be directed to that agency. But in terms of our models, yes, the models consider riverbed levels, including sediment and gravel accumulation, but only really in our network. It wouldn't be reflected in the Greater Wellington Waikanae River accumulation. So when we built our hydraulic models, we use the LiDAR data for land elevation and we incorporate detailed survey data. This includes cross-sectional information that reflects the actual height and shape of a channel, culvert, or bridge survey data. That's the base model. Partial blockages, rapid aggregation of gravel, and pump station failure is represented as part of a sensitivity analysis, which in turn contributes to our understanding of freeboard. And freeboard is just, it's kind of a minimum build level. So it's those areas of the district that may not be directly impacted by the top water level. But if anything occurs, like a critical blockage, the stream gets blocked, pump station fails, the storm design of the storm or the spatial distribution of the rainfall is different to what we've modelled, then that allows, there to be maybe a minimum build level outside of the top water level that protects property. But we're not really there yet either. So the question was right. Sedimentation, especially at river mouths and stream mouths, is a natural and ongoing process. And not even at the river mouth, you can get it drop out at various stages of a stream, particularly on the Kapiti coast, where we have the hills that shallow out and the gradient shallows out over the plains, and this provides an opportunity for gravel and sediment to drop out. And even if gravel is removed through river management or flood protection works, it can reaccumulate over time due to upstream transportation, and this can occur reasonably regularly. And this is one of the factors considered when we assess long-term flood risk and when councils plan river and stream water management strategies.
Next, we have a question. Why are we using aerial images in your modelling that are at least 4 years out of date?
Thank you. I suppose this touches on an important distinction between aerial imagery and the actual data used in the model. While some of the aerial images shown in our maps might look a few years old, in some cases they are, it's important to know that the flood model itself doesn't rely on those images. The model is built using LiDAR elevation data, which provides very precise, high-resolution 3D information about the land surface, including contours, slopes, and depressions that influence where water flows. Our latest model uses LiDAR flown in 2017, which is much more accurate than standard aerial photography for this purpose. We will actually be updating that LiDAR information as part of the finalisation of these models. It has been flown since 2017, but when we started the model build process, it was what was available at the time. Yeah, so in short, the modelling is based on recent and accurate elevation data, not the older imagery you might see in the background. It does help. The older imagery does help you sort of locate your space, locate yourself spatially, so it is useful.
There's a question here. What would the models look like if council inserted more street drains and also cleaned sumps and leaves from the drains more frequently?
In terms of inserting more street drains, we do have a minor works program and a forward works program, capital works program, in which we will install new infrastructure and upgrade and renew existing infrastructure. The Kapiti Coast can be a bit tricky in places because you still need the water to fall in a direction, and some of our areas might be below ground, so require a little more active movement as opposed to in the terms of pump stations and the like. Council spends approximately $1.5 million on stormwater pipe and open channel maintenance, as well as sump cleaning and urban rural culverts and swale sweeping. But it's important to note, our draft flood maps represent an event that we're required to prepare for, but have not experienced before. In a large event, storm, such as Cyclone Gabrielle in the Hawke's Bay, floating debris, leaves and other material could block our drains, and heavy rainfall could overwhelm our networks. It's interesting that quite often in urban areas, cars can block culverts. It's not just leaves and twigs. In terms of the model, the base model assumes the network is working as designed. As with the open channel network, partial blockages, rapid aggregation of gravel and pump station failure, along with a couple of other things, are represented as part of the sensitivity analysis, which in turn contributes to our understanding of freeboard.
Okay, thanks, Rita. There's a question there about the mapping portal and whether the map layers could show stormwater drains. They're not included currently, but if that's something that would be of interest, then yeah, we could look to get that included. So we'll sort that out in the next week.
Yep.
Then there's some questions there about concerns around insurance, consequences for insurance and property values. Do you want to take that, Rita?
I can do. Insurance companies independently assess flood risk when offering policies and determining premiums. While insurers consider local flood information, many factors influence their decisions, including individual property characteristics and historic claims. The new flood models, by providing more accurate and detailed information, will help insurers better understand local risk at a more granular level. While understanding the future climate risks is important to insurance companies, including understanding council's response to those risks, understanding current flood risk is a more immediate concern in terms of insurability and setting premiums. Mitigation and adaptive measures such as flood infrastructure improvements and land use planning help reduce flood risks over time. Proactive strategies such as these can positively influence insurers' risk evaluations. This supports continued insurability and helps keep premiums down over the long term. We are talking to the Insurance Council as we move through this process.
We also got a question. Sorry,
Rita. So just particularly in terms of what their risk profile is and what would be helpful, because recognising that the Q100 event isn't necessarily what they're wanting and isn't particularly helpful.
Also got a question on rates. So how rates will relate to yeah. Do you want to take that one, or Sean?
I don't know. Sean, do you want?
I can answer that. I think that question was talking about what impact would the modelling work have on the rates, and really that as I mentioned before, the council's forward program for stormwater improvements, and so that rates number would be reliant on what council decides is an acceptable amount of money to invest in stormwater upgrades. So the model itself doesn't have a direct impact on rates, but it will help us to present to council much more comprehensive information around where the best return on that investment in flooding is likely to be. So we can use that model to run different scenarios and different sizes of pipes and different areas and tell them where the greatest benefit is in terms of the effects on properties, and then also what that means in terms of pipe sizes and costs and everything else. So, and then when we set those rates numbers, obviously they come back out through the long-term plan or the annual plan process.
And I suppose the added benefit of these new models is that we can actually set time periods, so we can actually structure so we're not over investing too soon. We are investing when we actually need that capacity, as opposed to trying to do it all at once. So that spreads the capital work program over years and can justify that spreading.
There's also some questions here about what's the intended frequency for updating the LiDAR and other inputs into the model. How frequently in terms of years and things.
Yeah, I think I provided I can answer that one. I think we generally work with the rest of the region. So because of the cost associated with flying that update work, we collectively do it with the rest of the region. So I think previously the intention had been to do it every 3 years, but as prices have come down for that type of work, we might look at doing that more frequently in the future. But I think that was the starting point in terms of the update.
And I suppose in terms of changes to land use and subdivisions and development and our upgrade projects, then there would be a schedule for keeping the models current. One of the beauties of these models is that they are able to be kept current. It is an easier process than the old models and a cheaper process, and it means that we can actually do it more regularly. So it could be a 6 or 12 month update as opposed to a 10-year update.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of drone usage these days is becoming standard practice in terms of some of these bigger subdivisions in terms of the survey work. So again, technology has advanced to the point where we can update this work probably a lot more frequently than we have in the past. So that should be helpful for everyone.
We also have a question here. How will the nuances of the modelling be reflected on LIMS, which people will be looking at when to sell their properties? Did you want to take that, Sean?
Yeah, so the process we're going through at the moment is really to confirm the model. There's more work to be done, basically relating that back to LIMS. So that's a a separate but sort of linked process.
I'm not seeing much more coming through in the chat. I can see. Anyway, any other questions we receive, we'll have a look, probably like a very deep look at whatever has been submitted into the chat, and any that we haven't picked up in our Q&A session, we can we'll update our FAQs as we mentioned, or get back to you directly. I'm thinking. We've got one question.
Yep.
Actually, we've been asked to submit photographs to Council's historic flooding going forward. Is there somewhere we could send photographs after events now that we know they're helpful for long-term planning? There is actually, I know the answer to that question is there is a website called Flood Maps. I think I'll perhaps find a spot to put that on our Have Your Say page, but where people can at any time put information about flood photos. I think it's all flood photos. Sorry. I'll put that somewhere on the Have Your Say page. This is a place you can just upload your photos on flooding if you're interested.
Yeah, and we also, I suppose, in an event, as long as we're not caught on the hop, we do go out and potentially survey water levels and take photos. It's really good to help verify and calibrate the model, just to make sure that it does actually reflect reality, because then you can work backwards to a particular size event and see what the impact was in reality and judge that against the model.
Yeah, I just add to Simon's comments about questions. So if people feel we will be getting back to people that have asked questions. If we even if we've answered them verbally tonight, we'll still get back to you and provide a written response. So if you don't think the response tonight was sort of fulsome enough, hopefully when we get back to you, we can do that maybe a bit more fulsome when we provide you a written response. So rest assured, we will get back to you.
I think that's probably all I've got. Sean.
Okay, I think so. We've had quite a few questions, and I apologise if some of this has been a little bit technical, but we're sort of trying to convert quite a technical process into something that's useful for people, and sometimes that can be a bit of jargon thrown in there that might make it a bit more not quite so clear for everyone. But as we've said before, we're going to have these drop-in sessions, which are always a great opportunity to ask questions face to face, and that hopefully will also help if you don't think that you've got what you needed from tonight's session. So as we've said a couple of times, make sure you visit the haveyourSay.kapiticoast.govt.nz/floodmaps, and we'll be updating the FAQs on there as well, based on tonight, and as we get more questions over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Have a look at those tools online. They're really quite useful to look at the different levels of change associated with some of the extents of the flooding in there. And I think you can see some of the images tonight, the difference between the older district plan maps and the extent of some of those, and the how more refined, I guess, the new data is in terms of some of the extent of the flooding that's provided through there. So we really want to hear back from you by 8th of June, and then we'll look to incorporate that into our work, as Rita has mentioned, updating and reworking some of the areas of the model if we need to. And I think it's, if something's obvious and it's reasonably straightforward, then we don't need to spend a whole lot of time surveying or getting as-builts or plans and things like that. We're more than happy to make those changes to the model. And again, the system we're using at the moment is a lot more straightforward that allows us to do that. And again, thank you everyone for engaging and helping us basically deliver back this really important piece of work for the community from a safety and flood resilience point of view. I think it's essential that we try and get the best data we can so that we can make it available to you and to the council as we work through finding solutions. So I think that might be it. I don't think
Maybe one last question. Is there an estimation of the duration of the flooding for each scenario? Do you have? Again, we could probably pop that in the chat. There are, I think, critical storm durations in the technical reports we can dig out, and we'll put that into the FAQs.
Yeah, it is for a particular design event. Yeah, so we can, yeah, we'll talk about it later. We can respond directly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you at the pop-up sessions, hopefully.